Hello, everyone. My name is Marcel Vander Wier, and I am the editor of Talent Canada. I'm joined today by CC Powell, Principal Consultant at Clear HR Consulting in Vancouver.
Manny Campioni, Market Leader and Principal at Norman and Beaudry in Toronto.
And Daytree Caraher, founder of Carvo Group, an HR management company in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. Thanks so much for joining me, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The goal of this session is to gather information on each of your experiences over the past 2 months as Canada works to get through the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm so happy to have 3 provinces represented, and I'm looking forward to hearing from each of you about how human resources is being affected across Canada. So without further ado, let's turn to you guys. Cece, let's begin with you.
All right.
How has the COVID-19 pandemic affected your staff personnel decisions, and has there been any changes from your initial response to now?
For us, it hasn't really affected us from a staffing perspective. I would say it's certainly more from interactions with our clients. So we work with clients who are small, mid-sized companies. They don't have internal HR support. And I would say it has been just nonstop question after question after question for the past 7 weeks. So since about mid-March, the number of questions and the volume of questions, everything from at the beginning, it was all around hygiene. How do we make sure that people clean their hands and don't come to work if they're sick, to then what do we do with everybody working from home or not equipped to work from home? Do we need to give everybody laptops? To now, what about layoffs and EI? And then all the government programs. And now it's more about, how do we gradually return people back to work when the time comes? So I would say it's just, for us, it's been trying to deal with the volume of questions, and we're seeing waves of questions that have been coming through.
Thank you. Manny, how's your experience been?
Very, very similar. The Ontario market has been pretty hard hit as well, and there's a lot of HR practitioners, whether they be from large companies or small companies, that they have many questions related to how to deal with what's happening. We're in the total rewards space, and we get a variety of questions ranging from what the government is doing, not doing, what they hear, what they understand, and then there's a lot of forums out there for questions. So, quite often we're out there fielding questions and trying to make sure that those various HR practitioners and organizations understand how they work. One of the most common ones is, how does CERB work with EI, and how does it work with a sub, and so on and so forth. It's the range of questions is monetary to non-monetary.
Yeah.
Daytree, how about your experience?
Very similar to Manny and to CC. The questions are quite varied. I'm finding that the smaller the company, the less structure. It's been 20 years of our experience. Without the HR supports, they're leaning on us more now because they don't have any internal staff to actually typically handle these types of questions. So we're fielding a number of different questions as well related to that. It hasn't affected our business because most of our workers are remote anyhow. But what I'm finding is, out of the gate, there were some who were very paralyzed by the problem, and others who were very quick to search for solutions. So yeah, it's been quite varied across the board. Some pretty heartfelt conversations, difficult conversations with employers who've had long-standing staff. And now we're in the difficult position of deciding how do we go about doing layoffs, and I don't want to lay off my employees. So it's been a lot of heartfelt conversations, and then getting into how do I protect the organization and make sure that it can be sustainable going forward. So very similar to across Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to go right back to you, Daytree, with the next question, but obviously Canada is beginning to reopen very slowly the provincial economies. How much do you think workplaces will be affected in PEI?
Well, we're already seeing the impact now. Just a few days ago, they announced that the cruise ships won't be coming to Prince Edward Island, and we have a population of about 157,000 people. So we're not big, but it'll take a big impact. We'll definitely see the ramifications through the summer and then coming more into the fall. So we have a high seasonal workforce. The borders, so we have a Confederation Bridge, which is one of our primary gateways to the province. We have the ferry, and we have the airport. So we're able to shut down, but I think we attract about 1.5 million people to the province between May and September. We won't see those people. So that's going to have a major impact on our seasonal employers for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Manny, what's your take on how much workplaces will change following COVID-19?
I think fundamentally we're in the midst of the change as it is right now. Anyway, there's an obvious pivot from the work-life perspective and also the work perspective and the workplace perspective. So, we've seen a lot of the frontline staff and organizations therein take a lot of extraordinary measures. I've never thought about a plexiglass veil between me and someone at a cash before, but that's the newest of the new normals, so to speak. But we do see the whole digitization, work from home, all things that have been discussed, future of work, coming to roost. What we've been pleased with, if you will, is a rethink on what I would call the 4 Ps, right? There's always been purpose, planet, people, and profit. We've always seen profit either at number 1 and number 2. It's great to see the people side emerge back to number 1. And I think we just need to rethink everything we do.
Great comment. Cece, anything to add from your perspective?
Yeah, I think we're already starting to see it a bit as well with conversations we've had with clients this week, as the province has announced a reopening plan for a few weeks from now. And the question around how do we return people to work? Like, how do we actually do it? Like, that is certainly a topic of conversation, that when we return people to work, it won't just be now back to what it was. We need to be looking more at health and safety measures, in the workplace that we just never thought about. We might need to look at half the workforce working from home and half at the office. And if you were in a cubicle space, you probably can't do that anymore because you need to maintain the physical distance. So what might that look like? To how do we make sure the photocopiers are sanitized after people use them? And what about the kitchen? Can we still have a kitchen? And like all of those questions, I think companies need to spend more time thinking about. And it's not just, hey, we can reopen, let's reopen. And I think it will change the habits that people have adapted over the last 8 weeks, and maybe that will be ongoing over the next 2, 3, 4 months. I think will get ingrained. The whole working from home thing, which, we kind of all had to force ourselves to then work from home. All of a sudden, I think some people will start getting used to that, and maybe there will be more flexible work arrangements going forward. And how we manage, I think, has to change. We're managing a remote workforce is very different than managing when you can see everybody in your workplace right in front of you. So better and different communication methods. And I certainly see some permanent changes going forward.
Okay.
If I could say as well, that the other, just kind of expanding on what Cece is saying as well, is I'm seeing organizations now taking a really keen interest in looking at, there's the process of moving people back into the workplace, but also looking at how robust are our policies and practices, procedures, and everything from absenteeism to sick leave to privacy policies. I mean, it's quite expansive. So I do see that organizations coming out of this, I'm really hoping that they'll do somewhat of a debrief to say, where did we do well, but also where can we improve? And we talk a lot about pandemic planning, but I feel like it's even just broader to say emergency planning, because many organizations have never faced this, but I don't anticipate that this will be the last time that we're faced with something like this.
I agree. And from an HR practitioners, if I may, I think we're also going to have to pay close attention to how the business model might change. There's a lot of traditional models that are fundamentally being disrupted on a regular basis. The concept of online retail was, I think a hobby for some and a passion for others, but now it's pretty much the only way to go. And that's going to change all things from supply chain to logistics to customer engagement and customer service. I think we as professionals need to rethink the work that follows the new business modeling.
I think the other thing too, kind of on that point, is the way the traditional views on how people perform work. For instance, we still have this now where clients will say, well, employees work from 9 to 5. Therefore, I know they're working. They come in at 9, they leave at 5. Now it's, well, when you're working from home, maybe it's less about the time in, but more about managing to objectives, which we've talked about for years, like manage to the objectives, to the deliverables, not necessarily time in. And that is a big mental shift for a lot of managers and business owners to say, okay, it doesn't matter if they're sitting at their desk, because you can't see them sitting at their desks anymore.
Yeah.
Great comments, you guys. It sounds like the COVID-19 pandemic will usher in a series of massive changes to the workplace. In terms of returning to work and the new policy that needs to be created, I'm wondering if each of you can comment on any advice you might have for your peers in terms of looking for appropriate policy in terms of health and safety, workstations, just returning to work post-pandemic. Why don't we begin with you, Manny?
Sure. The first piece of advice is don't rush into anything you'll regret. I think there's a lot of, again, hearsay, fiction around getting back into the regular swing of work, and everyone's worried about social distancing and do I have to wear a mask and so on and so forth. I really do believe that we should be very measured in our thinking and not rush into anything. And in fact, this is probably the greatest opportunity for us to get into conversations with our employee groups and manager groups and talk about trust, psychological safety. It's more than just physical health now.
Great. Daytree?
Yeah, so I guess if I were to give some advice to my peers, it would be take the time, as Manny had said, to actually do some good workforce planning. So take a step back, assess, which positions are essential to the operation of your business. What supports do we have in place to help those individuals? Do we have backups? It's a matter of doing some critical analysis, perhaps some scenario planning. The other thing I think throughout this whole process is we have had to let some longstanding employees leave, and they've left involuntarily perhaps. So I think we need to take time to reflect and go back to thank those people for their time and service to the organization. But going forward, I would like to see the same thing, to slow down, be methodical, be innovative. We're seeing a lot of innovation right now as well, which is fabulous. So in a way, this has forced us to be innovative so we can survive times like these. Yeah.
Thanks. And what about you, CC? Anything you would add to that?
Yeah, I would say rely on your health and safety experts, whether that's your consultants, whether that's your workers' compensation, regulatory bodies in the respective provinces. I know in BC, our WorkSafe BC is coming up with guidelines and recommendations industry by industry on how to maintain a safe workplace. And so I would certainly rely on those and taking those best practices and making them work in your respective organizations. But, like Manny and Daytree said, be measured, and you're not just going to rush into it that, Monday after the long weekend, we're all just going to go back to normal. I think taking that measured approach. I think the other area we need to be really cognizant of, and we are hearing a lot about this lately, is the whole issue around mental health. Mental health, anxiety, the anxiety levels are heightened across the communities, across workplaces. And we're hearing already that employees are not comfortable coming back to work because they're afraid of being out in their communities again. And I think a large part of helping people become more comfortable is in the communication that the employers do to discuss and involve their employees in making sure the workplace is safe, physically, emotionally, all of those issues.
Great. I've really appreciated each of your comments so far. I want to ask one more question and also open it up to a potential closing remark. But yeah, we have 3 provinces represented. I'm wondering if you've seen some particularly good HR practice from any specific businesses in your province, or anything you want to share from your area of the country specifically on the response to the pandemic. Start with Cece.
Yeah, if I were to take some of our clients, for example, I have been really, really impressed with clients of ours who are doing a great job at communicating with their employees and keeping them informed, because there's a lot of uncertainty, especially at the beginning, the panic that set in of what if, am I going to be out of a job? What's going to happen to me? And what's going on? And we had some clients where either they had to shut down right away, or, they had to do layoffs or whatnot, do an exceptional job of communicating to employees either in emails or newsletters, or phoning them up and saying, hey, you know what, your job is safe, or we don't know, like being very honest and open that we don't know, but these are the things we're going to do to help navigate the situation, and we're going to guarantee your jobs for X period of time. And I think the more information to kind of alleviate the fears, the better. So I would say I've seen some exceptional examples of communication and support and resources and keeping employees together as a team, even though everybody's apart.
Thank you. Manny.
Sure, I'll play to Cece's comments as well as Dietrich's, and I think the communication piece is incredibly important, and teaching managers and leaders how to lead over a virtual workplace is critical, and being able to communicate in a truthful, honest, transparent way is essential. And I've seen some organizations move aside less than great people leaders because they're just not capable to lead in that type of environment. I think the second piece that I would go back to as well is the broad sense of communication. And we've seen some communication go extremely well, especially when it's a fulsome end-to-end view. There's been a few organizations that have done a great job not to react to the various sound bites that have come out, but they've been specifically around total rewards, making sure that the employee understands how everything is interconnected, from their base pay to benefits to the introduction potentially of EAP, benefits, and so on and so forth. But taking that fulsome view of how it fits and works together from an employee experience perspective is absolutely a must.
Daytree, I'll let you close us out.
Well, I have some great stories, and maybe it's the East Coast mentality that we have here. But some of the employers have been absolutely fabulous, recognizing that they know that there is a somewhat of an end to this, or maybe a new normal, as we say. But I had a conversation yesterday with an employer who he decided to actually pay his staff for 5 days a week, but only have them work for 2. And he said, I'm going to take this cut because I know that the cost of rehiring and replacing those workers when everything bounces back is much greater than the cost to maintain them over a short period. So, that was one great story. Another client of mine has, we had some discussions around how do we provide something meaningful to staff while they're working remotely. And so we actually developed a training plan for them and gave them opportunities to do some upskilling and retraining and looking at new ways to improve their business. Another great story, and I have quite a few, but another great story was a relatively small employer has about 5 staff. What they decided to do is, it's actually an arts organization. What they decided to do was, there are no, one of our biggest employers is Confederation Center of the Arts. This wasn't the particular employer, it's a smaller one. But what they did was they actually agreed with their staff to come in, respecting physical distancing, and said, let's make some physical improvements to the property. So let's take care of mending our clothes. Let's take care of painting these rooms and actually put people back to work. So, there's some really great stories. There's some really, heart-wrenching stories through all of this as well. And I feel like we'll start to see that even more over the coming months. But I'm hopeful and optimistic. We're kind of forced into this change, which will be, it's pretty significant, but I do see some really great things coming out of this when we get through. Yeah.
Thank you so much, you guys, for sharing some of your day with me. Really want to wish you the best of luck as you continue to lead organizations through this pandemic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marcel.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having us.